Honorable Leader of the Opposition and Member for Castries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's unfortunate that we here more than 60 days after the passing of the budget to deal with something that we could have done 60 days ago. But due to the adjournment of the House for 40 days and 40 nights, we found ourselves in a position where we have to deal with something we could have dealt with a long time ago. But, Madam Speaker, I have a fundamental problem with the motion as read by the Honourable Minister for Finance. And my point of departure is the budget summary that gave life to the budget address read by the Honourable Minister for Finance. In the budget summary, Madam Speaker, and you will note that the budget is a deficit budget, a deficit of over $220 million. It's the largest deficit budget we've had for quite a while, over 4%. And it also showed increase in all the deficits. Primary deficits, all the deficits increased, Madam Speaker. So that we had an overall deficit of $220 million, even with an increase in the fuel tax of 60%, from $2.50 to $4, causing the price of fuel to increase by 60% per gallon because of the taxes. An increase in the airport tax of 152%, again causing the cost of travel to increase. We still had a deficit budget of $220 million. And we haven't even included financing for the airport, which is supposed to be $150 million because the government has abandoned the PPP option. So this is the scenario in which I will discuss the motion as outlined by the Prime Minister. The financing for the budget proposals, Madam Speaker, is actually $431,227. That is the financing for the budget, as compared to the last financial year, where the financing was $185 million. So the government has increased the loans by over $200 million this year, and that's still with a deficit budget of $220 million. But, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance is asking the Parliament to approve $103 million for financing of this budget. Now, if he's asking for $103 million, where will he get the money to continue to finance the other projects of the government? Because the money he's asking to borrow doesn't even cover the overall deficit that he has. $220 million deficit, but he's asking to borrow $103 million. So, Madam Speaker, you find that there must be something. The Minister of Finance must return to his honorable house to borrow more money, because it's just simple common sense. If he needs $345 million to finance this budget, and Madam Speaker, I want you to do a simple bit of arithmetic, very simple. If you look at the total expenses of the budget for this year, and we can, again, my point of departure is the budget summary, you will see that the total expenditure for this year is $1.5 billion. I just want to round it up. And the total income is $1.1 billion. So there is a deficit, a total deficit of $255 million. And that is exactly the financing that he's asking for in the budget summary, the $355 billion. He's asking for $345 billion. If you look at last year, you will see that the total expenses were 1.3 billion. Total income, 1.1 billion. The total deficit, 185 million. And the financing was 195 million, which is basically the same as last year. But this year, he's asking for only for $103 million. Where will he raise the remainder of the money? He has to return to his honorable house to borrow more money. And it gets even more serious, Madam Speaker, because the second part of the motion, he says, is to refinance existing debts. I'd like the Honorable Minister of Finance to give me a list of the existing debt that he is refinancing. Because again, Madam Speaker, if you look at the social and economic review, you will see that the last time they refinanced debts or they roll over debts, the debt was, and page 54 of the Social and Economic Review, you will see they rolled over $705 million worth of debt. This year he's saying to us that he only wants $262 million to roll over debt. But Madam Speaker, let me tell you what the roll over debt means. It means that, supposing it's very simple, you have some money in the bank and the bank gives you interest. So you say to the bank, pay me the interest and you hold my money. That's simply what a rollover of debt means. He had to roll over, according to the documents in the Ministry of Finance, $705 million worth of debt for the year 2015-2016. But this year, he's saying that he only wants $252 or $262 million to roll over debt. There is something wrong, Madam Speaker. There must be something wrong. And the Minister of Finance, if he is so minded, he may not be, will have to explain in simple economic terms, in simple numbers, why with a deficit of $220 million and needing $345 million to balance his budget, he's coming to the Parliament only to borrow $103 million. There must be something wrong, Madam Speaker. So, the Prime Minister will have to tell us, if he's so minded, what debts is he refinancing that are worth $262 million? Whereas the SEC says it's over $700 million worth of debt which he has to refinance. But, Madam Speaker, it gets even more interesting, because in this budget, the Honorable Prime Minister said to us that that is a growth budget, that will create employment, that will create jobs. And part of the examples he used is Ojo Labs. So, Madam Speaker, I was wondering, and by the Prime Minister's own explanation, he was on a plane going to speak to American Airlines. I know that, I've done that trip with him in another world. We had to go and speak to American Airlines, a fellow called Mr. Dilara. But Dilara isn't there again. So I know about that trip. So he went to speak to the American Airlines. And while he was there, he flew to Austin, Texas. When he went to Austin, Texas, he met a guy. The guy said, "You come along, let's chat." He says, "Right away, I agree. I'm going to give you $4 million. I'm going to refit the factory for you. I'm going to pay your staff for you." But, Madam Speaker, there was no review, you know. When it's the nice workers, they have a review. When it's solutions, nice workers, there's a review. There's a Minister of Investment. There's the Invest in Lucia. No discussion. The Prime Minister, running the government like a business, decides that he's going to take $4 million and refit a factory for a gentleman. But I looked further, and I wondered, why was the Prime Minister doing that? Because the Prime Minister must have a motive. And he spoke about artificial intelligence. And I want you to research artificial intelligence, Madam Speaker. And research artificial intelligence and see what is that all about. Artificial intelligence is a new phenomenon that deals with several things, including the mind, including mind bending, data analytics. And that has been used in the politics in the region. That has been used in the politics in the region. So when the Prime Minister, and Madam Speaker, when you say these things, I always tell him, all of you all can go on Google. Go Google artificial intelligence. Google it. Google it and see what it's all about. It's not me saying that, you know. It deals with several things. It's a new phenomenon. There are benefits and there are downsides. But part of it, I repeat, is data analytics that has been used in political campaigning in the region. So I'm saying to myself, the Prime Minister was so enthusiastic in speaking to Ojo Labs. He was so enthusiastic that he, by his own admission, agreed that he would give the man $1,000 per employee. Nobody knows how many employees. No review like the nice workers or St. Jude's Hospital. No analysis from the Ministry of Investment. But the cabinet agrees, Madam Speaker. There must be something more than employment. How many people are going to be employed? How many people are going to be employed at Ojo Labs? And why must we use $5 million of the money that we are going to borrow to finance Ojo Labs? The answer, and you might call me cynical, but my experience with this government causes me to be cynical. There must be something, because artificial intelligence deals with mind bending. Look for the campaign. Because no one knows what's happening there. And I want you to research it. And you will find out what's happening there, Madam Speaker. And again, the Prime Minister was in a party with his bow tie. And he said, oh, I met some lady. And I told her to go and open some school for me. And I'm happy that she opened it. In effect, he's saying that in effect. And you don't know what that meant, Mr. Speaker? Madam Speaker? That meant another $5 million for hospitality training, in effect. But Madam Speaker, if you say anything, they tell you, you now know that. And that is what, and they tell you, you are power, you want to be in power. But these are facts, Madam Speaker. $10 million is the money that we are going to borrow. One of them in a plane from Texas, the other one in effect. That is the analysis, Madam Speaker, that we put into government's decision in St. Lucia. But, Madam Speaker, further, even, Madam Speaker, and I'm going to put it to you, that the increase in fuel taxes by 60% is one of the highest tax increases ever in the history of St. Lucia's political and economic development. $1, and the increase from $2.50 to $4 is one of the highest increases. And we will see, Madam Speaker, because, you know, when you say these things, they always believe that you're imputing improper motives, and they go all over the place instead of coming back to the reality and to the facts. Even to tell you that St. Lucians won't worry about that because they buy $20 gas, so they don't care about that. So even the price go up by $1.50, they don't care because they buy $20 gas. These are the excuses we make, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, because of the excesses of this government, I am putting it to you that we have to return to this honorable house to borrow money to finance the 2017-2018 budget. Because this motion, as it stands, is not enough. It cannot finance it. And the Prime Minister should come and say to the House that the amount which is as in which the motion speaks to, which is 103 and 262, which is $365 million, is to finance this budget and not to refinance any existing debt. It is to refinance this budget because he cannot. And I defy him to give me a list of the debts that he is refinancing for $20. Because if you look at the social and economic review and you look at the debts that are maturing in 2017, you will see it comes to a lot less, a lot more than $252 million. And if you look at page 54 of the review of the economy, and I quote, during the review period, 465.7 million in treasury bills and 239 million of bullet bonds matured and were rolled over. Therefore, the principal repayments made towards amortized bonds and loans increased to 46.4 million in 2016. So this motion, Madam Speaker, to my mind, is fundamentally flawed, or it doesn't serve to tell the entire story of the state of the economy based on the budget summary and based on the budget statement which was delivered by the Prime Minister. It's common sense. A 220 million deficit budget cannot be financed only by $103 million of loans. Impossible. So the Prime Minister must tell us where he's getting the money from and how he intends to finance his budget, to finance his Ojo labs, etc. Where he's getting the money from to finance it, because this motion cannot finance a budget as stated by the Honourable Prime Minister. I thank you, Madam Speaker.